approche innovante pour augmenter la portée des mesures de contrainte par le Bureau Veritas. Donc, c'est Alexandru Andoniu qui va présenter, c'est ça?
Bon,
merci.
En premier, je suis désolé pour le retard. J'ai supposé qu'on aura 15 minutes de décalage parce qu'on est parti un peu plus tard. C'est le PowerPoint où il a le dernier. Donc, moi, je m'appelle Alexandre Andoniu. Je suis ingénieur et je travaille dans le département de recherche du Bureau Veritas. Et donc, aujourd'hui, je vais parler de nos travaux qui sont dirigés vers le design d'une méthode, d'une approche qui permet d'augmenter la portée des mesures à l'échelle réelle. Et donc, je vais passer en anglais parce que c'est plus confortable pour moi. Voilà. J'ai structuré la présentation en 4 parties. Je vais parler un peu pourquoi on veut faire du monitoring et qu'est-ce que ça peut apporter. Ensuite, je vais détailler qu'est-ce qu'on comprend, nous, par du monitoring de structure. Et ensuite, les exemples et quelques conclusions. So, the first question that we need to ask ourselves is why should we monitor the structure? And at least in theory, this can present some very interesting advantages. So the first thing is that we can, what we would like by putting sensors on a ship or on an offshore structure is to be able to detect unexpected failures in time to be able to mitigate the effect. Then what we would also like to be able to do is to predict how much service life is left for our asset or for our fleet of assets. Then another interesting aspect to monitoring the structure would be to be able to use this information to support decisions regarding inspections, maintenance, or repair. Finally, when our asset or our fleet of assets will get to the end of the predicted lifetime, we would like to be able to use all this data in order to inform decisions regarding the lifetime extension. And finally, this is maybe more of a cliche, you could call it, but it's still important to take into account. We want to use all this data in order to improve our knowledge of the structural behavior. And this is of interest to verification bodies, to designers, to shipyards, basically to everybody involved in the loop. And because digital twin is a very fashionable topic nowadays, and in the past years we've been hearing a lot of talk about this, I want to underline that from our point of view, structural health monitoring is just a piece in this more complex concept, which is the digital twin. So first, before talking about how we can monitor the structure, I think it's a good idea to give maybe a non-technical definition to structural monitoring, which from my point of view could be something like, by performing structural health monitoring, we want to be able to evaluate the structural health of the unit at any given moment in time. And you may find these concepts under different names, but basically, I think the 3 categories I'm going to talk about will cover most of them. So first, we have the classical method, which is a sensor-based monitoring system. That is, we directly measure the response in terms of stresses, accelerations, motions, relative wave elevation, or any other measurable response by installing sensors on our asset or on the fleet of assets. Then, because we are more and more thinking in terms of digital transformation, we have what can be summarized as virtual monitoring. Basically, this corresponds to using a numerical model, computing the response based on this numerical model, and assuming this is how the structure behaves at full scale. Of course, this means that we need very accurate numerical models. And then we have the third category, which basically tries to get the advantages of both sensor-based systems and virtual monitoring. And in BV, we have developed what we call the conversion matrix method, which is an innovative approach, and it's meant to basically extend the information that we can get from sensors. So theoretically, there is an interest to monitor the structure. We pretty much know what we can, how we can monitor the structure, but then we have to keep critic eye on what we can actually do with the data that we would get from a monitoring system, be it a virtual, a sensor-based, or a hybrid approach. And at this point, how to use data is still something that is related to more research-oriented discussions, and it's still debatable. But based on the work that we've done, we've identified some realistic objectives which we have achieved through our work. So the first thing is that we can do fatigue monitoring. That is, we can compare the fatigue accumulation from monitoring with what is actually seen so what we are measuring with what we have predicted or what we are able to compute with our numerical models. Then we can monitor the extreme values for a given parameter in order to ensure that we're staying in the safe limits. And then we can also use this data to improve knowledge on specific topics. And one of the topics that we've used it for is to understand how high frequency vibrations can impact fatigue or extreme values on container ships, for example. And the last objective for us is that we can use all this data to validate software and methodology. The second section is about the structural health monitoring. So first of all, we have the virtual monitoring, which is just a result. So we have a chain of simulations. Each link in this chain will bring uncertainties, and the goal is to get the structural response. If we have a sensor-based system, then this structural response is directly measured. And we still have uncertainties related to the sensors. If we are to compare this, I'm not sure you can all see, but qualitatively, there's a few points to make here. First of all, sensor-based systems are what we consider at this point to be the most accurate. But they come with some disadvantages. That is, we can only get the response at the locations where we are installing sensors or close to those locations by using SCF, stress concentration factors and so on. There are practical issues regarding maintenance, data acquisition systems, and so on. So besides this accuracy issue, virtual health monitoring has a great interest because this allows us to get access to all physical quantities that we desire, and it's also more affordable and simpler in terms of complexity. Now, before explaining the third method, which is a hybrid method, I want to introduce the conversion matrix concept. So basically, the conversion matrix is, as the name says, a matrix which makes a link between some inputs, which are usually physical quantities that we are able to measure, and some outputs, which are physical quantities that either we cannot measure, which is, for example, the case of bending moments, or physical quantities that we don't really want to measure, or it's not feasible to measure. For example, stresses. If we have 200 hotspots that we'd like to monitor, it's not feasible to install sensors at all those 200 locations. So the idea would be to take advantage of the fact that we have accurate finite element models and hydrostructure coupling codes. And the idea is to build a relationship between the virtual sensors. So we just place some virtual sensors at the locations where the real sensors will be on the ship. We build this relationship between the stresses at locations, at the virtual locations, and the physical quantities that we are interested in output. And once this relationship called conversion matrix is built, then we can feed it with real data and achieve the response at full scale. I will not insist a lot on how this is built because it's a very complex, I mean, it can lead to very complex discussions, but basically we take the inputs and the outputs and we express them on a model distortion basis. And currently what we are using is dynamic wave modes, that is the deformation of the structure for specific regular waves. And we can build this relationship between outputs and inputs. A small example about how this works. So on the left-hand side, there's a numerical simulation, a time domain simulation. On the right-hand side, there's no simulation. We only have the stresses at these 4 locations, which we assume we have sensors there, and we multiply this with the conversion matrix. And if I launch this simulation, so numerically speaking, we can see that the stress field in the deck and on the shell is correctly recomposed by this conversion matrix approach. And here, what you can see is the recomposed stress on the vertical axis against the directly computed stress. And we can see for each element, so these are maybe a few hundred, few tens of thousands of elements, the stress that is recomputed against the measured one. And we can see that anytime we have considerable stress, then the conversion matrix works pretty well. So the advantage of this type of hybrid approach is to basically use what is good for between the 2 other approaches. So in virtual monitoring, we have this whole chain of simulations in order to get the structural response that we can directly measure by using a sensor-based system. And if we use a hybrid approach, then we can get rid of the uncertainties related to partially to the uncertainties related to these links, and all we need is an accurate structural model in order to get the structural response. And now I have some examples. So actually 2 examples. The first one is a military ship. So on this ship, so this is part of a GIP with the US Coast Guards and Marine and some other partners. And it had 3 phases so far. So in the first phase, there was a ship that was instrumented with 24 sensors, 24 long base strain gauges. So there were sensors on the deck, and I'm not sure if below the deck, and also some local sensors in order to validate stresses, local stresses. And in the second phase, so there were some studies that were done, and in the second phase, all this instrumentation, thanks to using the conversion matrix approach, all this instrumentation was reduced to only 3 sensors. So these are the red points present here, and some other local sensors in order to validate the approach. So what we did is actually a thing that I haven't mentioned, but it's important to mention. One of the challenges, basically the main challenge of this approach is to be able to find the right basis of distortion in order to accurately recompose the output quantities. So here, in the first phase, what we used is the first mode of distortion was chosen as the wave that maximizes the vertical bending moment at midship, and then the software automatically is able to find the rest of the modes needed to compute the conversion matrix. And we have tested a new approach for this work, which is to use a first mode that maximizes the stress at one of the output locations. And again, the software will automatically select the other modes needed to compute the conversion matrix. So in terms of results, we have the free LBSGs which are used as input in the conversion matrix, and we have the direct strain measurements at the free locations in green, and we can reconstruct using the conversion matrix the time signals at each of these locations. And what we can see here is the reconstruction in green of the time series, I think it's a 30-second window for the SG2. So we can see that actually what is reconstructed via the conversion matrix agrees fairly well with what is directly measured. And what we can do here is for a number of deployments, we can compute for each time window the stress standard deviation, and we can compare what is converted on the vertical axis via the conversion matrix method and what is directly measured. And this can be done for each of the local sensors. And we can see that the agreement is fairly good between what the conversion matrix outputs as results and what is directly measured. Of course, the main, we also want to be able to estimate fatigue. And we can compute the fatigue accumulation over time, and we can see for each of the local strain gauges that the conversion matrix method yields accurate and satisfactory results. The next example is an FPSO. So the principle is similar. We have some sensors installed on the FPSO. This has been done within the Monitas GIP, and we can use the data coming from these sensors to validate our conversion matrix method, but also the virtual monitoring. So first, a slide about the virtual monitoring. So basically, we take the measured sea states on site, which come from a buoy, and we are able to compute the stress standard deviation for each time window and compare it to what is directly measured, and we can see that our numerical model is fairly accurate. And then what we can do is for each time window, we can take the time signals from three of the sensors placed on the deck, and we can use a conversion matrix to recompose the stresses at the fourth sensor. And an interesting aspect to see is that here the virtual monitoring results are in yellow. Maybe it's better to look at the other screen. And the conversion matrix results for two different bases of distortions are in blue or red. And we can see here that the conversion matrix performs better than the virtual monitoring, which is kind of intuitive because we are feeding the conversion matrix, even if it is a numerical relationship, we are feeding it with measurement data. And so we can do this for any combination of three sensors on deck in order to validate against the fourth one. And we can see that the results are fairly good. And this is also normal because we have to take into account the fact that all these sensors, they are sensible to the same type of efforts. So there is no local effect in order to disturb the behavior. So the conversion matrix will mostly work in cases like this. Of course, we can look at the fatigue accumulation. We have the same type of trends. The virtual monitoring is basically outperformed by the conversion matrix for three of the sensors, and it's a bit of a debate for this sensor. It depends basically on the basis of distortion modes that is finally used. And so my conclusions are as following. We have at our disposal several ways to perform structure health monitoring, and this has to be done by keeping in mind what are the actual objectives and what we can actually do with the data that we are gathering from such systems. For the sensor-based system, this is a robust and proven solution, but the big downside is that it's limited to measurable quantities. It is expensive to get access to a lot of data with this kind of system. Then we have the virtual monitoring, which is has the big advantage that we can access stresses or acceleration or any other response anywhere on the ship. And this is also cost effective compared to sensor-based system, but we have the issue of accuracy. And then this innovative approach, which we have seen that it has good potential and it works for full-scale applications, which is an innovative way to access stresses at uninstrumented locations over a structure. It is cost-effective compared to a full sensor-based system, and it maintains good accuracy. We have validated it against several types of structures. Not all the work is published yet. And two important things that I want to mention before ending is that we can apply this to an existing system. That is, you already have your instrumentation in place and you want to use this kind of method to expand what your instrumentation system is able to do. Or we can use it to properly design an SHM system. That is, we do the inverse problem. We ask ourselves, what do we want to obtain from our monitoring system? And then we can use this kind of methods in order to choose where and how many sensors to place. So, thank you. I'm not sure if I passed my time, but that's it. Thank you.
Donc, s'il y a quelques questions.
Est-ce que vous aviez étudié où placer les sensors sur le design des chips?
Pour ces deux applications, non, parce que historiquement, donc en fait pour le FPSO, la réponse est non, parce que historiquement, on se dit c'est comme ça. À l'époque, je pense que c'était début de l'année 2000. On a décidé de placer les capteurs comme ça parce que donc il y a des capteurs là placés au niveau du pont, il y a des capteurs sur les side shell stiffeners, il y a des capteurs au niveau des stringers, et donc honnêtement j'ai pas de connaissance sur comment ça a été décidé, mais j'imagine que c'est pour essayer de choper les effets de houle, les effets de chargement pour les capteurs qui sont sous le stringer. Mais donc je pense pas qu'il y a eu il n'y a pas eu une méthode telle que la matrice de conversion pour déterminer la position. Pour le navire militaire, donc la première phase du projet, il y a eu pas mal de capteurs qui ont été instrumentés, et donc il y a eu pas mal de données, et donc c'était basé justement sur les matrices de conversion que cette instrumentation a été retenue pour les sister ships. Voilà.
J'ai une question complémentaire, c'est que là, vous avez fait qu'une seule matrice, là, donc de LG, BSG 1, 2, 3 vers les trois jaunes, mais pourquoi vous n'avez pas fait aussi vers trois autres des 11 LSG au hasard, et comme ça vous construisez vos matrices pour chacun des triplets, et vous prouvez comme ça votre méthode pour tous les capteurs locaux, pas seulement pour les capteurs qui sont restés pour valider le...
Ah, ok. Donc...
Parce que là, on a l'impression que, quelque part, vous laissez avec...
C'est deux bateaux différents, Jean-Marc.
Mais vous laissez les capteurs, mais au final...
Non, c'est deux bateaux différents. Le deuxième, c'est un deuxième sister ship qui, lui, n'était équipé que de 3 capteurs long base et de 3 capteurs locaux.
Je suis passé un peu vite. Donc ça, c'est le premier bateau, et ça, c'est un sister ship où l'instrumentation a été réduite à ces capteurs. Et après, pour tout ce qui est validation, ça c'est le point qui est un peu, c'est pas embêtant, mais c'est la réalité, c'est que pour pouvoir faire de la validation, il faut qu'on ait des données propres et aussi des modèles propres. Et donc, par exemple, il y a eu quelques soucis qui ont été rectifiés, par exemple d'histoire de maillage. Là où on regardait les contraintes, on n'avait pas le modèle n'était pas conforme au plan, et donc il y avait des discrépances et tout ça. Donc, parce que je pense qu'il y a plusieurs capteurs jauges locaux sur ce bateau, mais qu'on n'a pas utilisé pour la validation, sur des motifs un peu concrets.
Et concrètement, vous laissez votre monitoring simplifié sur ce bateau-là? Ils l'ont conservé, les US Coast Guard à long terme?
Les US Coast Guard, je pense qu'ils gardent les capteurs. Les capteurs sont en place et ils mesurent.
question sur la matrice, la méthode de conversion. Là.
Oui.
Parce que je comprends qu'on est sur une approche hybride données et modèles. Qu'on sait que la donnée, elle est imparfaite, bruitée, etc. Et que le modèle, lui, il n'est pas forcément fidèle à 100% de la réalité. Comment vous arrivez à faire communiquer ces deux mondes? Ça, c'est ma première question. Et ma deuxième, comment vous gérez les configurations? Par exemple, si le bateau change de configuration, ou même s'il y a une avarie, il y a un défaut, est-ce que le modèle est adaptatif et peut prendre en compte ce changement de configuration? Enfin, il y a un événement, quel qu'il soit.
Donc, pour la première question, les limites de la méthode, donc tout ce qui est bruit de mesure et le fait que le modèle il est imparfait, on ne gère pas pour l'instant d'une façon précise. On se base sur l'hypothèse que le modèle élément fini il est exact. Voilà. Et donc, c'est pour ça qu'en pratique, on arrive à avoir des problèmes où ça marche pour 2 capteurs, mais ça marche pas pour le 3e. Et parfois, on trouve qu'en fait, le modèle est feu, il n'est pas exact, il n'est pas conforme au plan, ou que la modélisation peut être améliorée. Voilà. Donc ça, c'est pour...
Le capteur n'a pas été mis là où il aurait dû être mis.
Voilà. Pour tout ce qui est précision du mesure, quand on calcule la matrice de conversion, on calcule une précision sur les sorties, et donc on a une image de qu'est-ce que ça peut faire si les capteurs enregistrent l'entrée avec une précision. Par exemple, je sais pas, 0,5 mégapascal ou 0,1 mégapascal, etc. Et donc la deuxième question, c'était
sur la configuration.
Sur la configuration. Ça, c'est une question très intéressante. C'est pour ça que j'ai voulu finir avec les deux facettes, les deux possibilités d'utilisation de cette méthode. Et donc, pour l'instant, on ne fait pas ça parce que la plupart des projets sont des projets de recherche. Mais dans la pratique, qu'est-ce qu'on devrait faire? C'est de prévoir de la redondance. Et donc, si par exemple on dit que pour monitorer une telle structure avec 100 hotspots, il faut avoir, je sais pas, une vingtaine de capteurs, il faut prévoir que ces capteurs soient suffisamment redondants et on peut calculer des matrices en laissant de côté 1 ou 2 capteurs ou 3 capteurs pour toujours reproduire la contrainte là où ça nous intéresse, si on parle de contrainte. Voilà. Mais donc il y a des façons à faire. Par contre, pour les projets que je vous ai présentés, on n'a pas pensé à ça. Voilà. Mais ici, par exemple, les 3 LBG, juste comme une note, c'était pas la recommandation qu'on a fait du point de vue étude. Mais les Coast Guard ont dit, bah non, on veut avoir de la redondance au niveau du midship. Et donc c'est pour ça qu'il y a les 2 LBG là. Parce que je pense que la configuration était légèrement différente. Je pense que c'était une espèce de V. Ou...
Oui, l'optimum était en V. Ouais.
Ouais. Numériquement. Voilà.
Mais effectivement, si on a un navire de charge avec plusieurs tirants d'eau, si on a une plateforme offshore qui a subi une remise à jour à midi et dont le devis de masse a complètement changé, il faut remettre à jour le modèle élément fini pour remettre à jour les matrices de conversion. Mais il n'y a pas un système intelligent auto-adaptatif. L'adaptation, elle est manuelle. Mais on peut tout à fait switcher d'une matrice de conversion à l'autre en fonction de la disponibilité des capteurs, en fonction du tirant d'eau, en fonction du devis de masse, etc.
Dans cette approche, du coup, est-ce que vous envisagez de couper finalement avec des capteurs de mesure, par exemple, environnementale ou chargement du bateau ou des choses comme ça, qui permettent justement d'attribuer les bonnes données au bon cas de chargement
c'est qu'est-ce qu'on a fait par exemple sur le FPSO. Donc là, je vous ai montré donc sur les graphes. Ici, il y a les points jaunes qui sont le virtual monitoring. Donc en gros, ça revient au calcul qu'on a fait pour une fenêtre d'une demi-heure qui était, je sais pas, en 2015, en mars, 25 mars 2015. On regarde quel est le cas de chargement et on fait les calculs avec ce cas de chargement. Mais donc, la difficulté du point de vue pratique, c'est qu'on a fait l'inverse, c'est-à-dire qu'on a regardé le cas de chargement qu'on avait et on a gardé que les points où on est bien sur le bon cas de chargement, etc.
C'est passionnant, mais je vais devoir malheureusement interrompre cette, comme la précédente d'ailleurs, et donc on va passer.